Hello, everyone. So that panel was interesting, wasn't it? The next session is pre-recorded, so we won't have any questions at the end. And this means also a goodbye from my side. I'll get to sit on the couch for this one and sort of relax. And I want to thank everyone for a wonderful day today, and all of the organizers too, of course. So the video is by Shadi Rostami, who is a senior VP of engineering at Amplitude. In increasing data awareness with self-serve analytics, we will learn some best practices on how we can influence data culture and enable our stakeholders. So without further ado, I will play the video and I hope you'll enjoy.
I'm a data leader at the data company, and I have the privilege of working with amazing data leaders from top organizations across the world. In the past few months, I have been on a listening tour and talked to over 100 data leaders. Today, I want to share these learnings that I have learned during these conversations. Hopefully, that can bring you an outside-in perspective and how other data leaders are thinking about their challenges and what are the opportunities. Specifically, we will focus on how we can scale data-driven decision-making within our organization and enable data access with self-serve analytics. I will share this in 5 lessons. Lesson 1. There are actually 2 technology stacks in the organization that is being used by different users, and the integration between them is a work in progress. The first stack is the growth stack. It has tools such as product analytics, marketing analytics, voice of customer, customer engagement, user acquisition, and so on and so forth. This is mainly used by non-technical users, the product team, marketing team, customer success, and so on. In the past decade, there has been an explosion of these tools in the companies, and most of the companies' purchases are happening here. So why companies are investing so much in these products, in this stack? Because it drives growth. There is a correlation with solving these challenging problems and optimizing and making them more efficient and the top line revenue growth of the company. And that's why there's been so much investment in the growth stack. On the other hand, there is another stack, which is mainly used by technical people. This is the modern data stack. From the data sources on how to get the data, to the data ingestion tools, and the center of the gravity being around storage and data warehouse, and then data tooling on top of that. And the last step of the stack, the top of the stack, is analytics. That is trying to bridge the gap and bridge to that growth analytics and growth stack. The analytics here mainly help technical team who knows SQL, because this is mainly SQL based on data warehouse, on top of the data warehouse. It helps the technical team to drive insights from the data that is already in the data warehouse. The challenge is leaders don't know how to integrate these 2 stacks. The technical stack, modern data stack, and the non-technical stack and the growth stack. So technical base and non-technical base stacks. There are some modern BI tools that are trying to bridge the technical and non-technical gaps. However, it's important to note that if your solution requires the user to know SQL, you're immediately marginalizing 90 to 95% of your team that are non-technical. So there is an opportunity for data leaders to know about these 2 stacks and think about how they can eventually become integrated. Specifically today, we want to discuss on how we can get insights out of the modern technical stacks and help basically enable the entire organization. Lesson number 2. Current tools do not enable teams to create, consume, use customer data that is already sitting in the data warehouse. I've talked with a number of data leaders, and this is a quote from one of them. They're saying that we need a front end. They actually use the word front end. We need a front end to the data warehouse for non technical users to analyze customer data. That's a very important problem that needs to be solved. When I talk to data leaders and data team, I see two different groups of data teams. On one hand, one of them that stood out are the one that they see their goal and their role in helping their company become data driven. This is a lot different from the some data teams that they see themselves as the center of data driven decisions, and they are the one that needs to use data to answer questions that helps unblock the org. The first camp of data leaders think themselves as enablers. They're facilitator. Their job is to unblock team not by answering question, but by enabling the team to be able to answer the question on their own. It's an interesting quote from Mitch from Hard Rock Digital. He's saying that operationalizing data is the hardest problem to solve. Demand for insight are impossible to meet with our team. So basically, he's saying that if you are sitting in the center and trying to answer any question that people are asking, if you have an army of data scientists trying to sit and answer questions, basically they would not be able to handle the load. And they're basically what you think happening in Mitch's company and Hard Rock Digital and other companies, that there is a shift from hiring an army of data scientists to answer questions, then building the infrastructure, hiring a data engineer, building the infrastructure so that data can move and be stored in a certain way, and that can be accessible by the entire organization and enable self-serve. So basically, instead of answering the question, facilitate and create the infrastructure so data can go somewhere that analysts, uh, product people, marketing people, technical and non-technical people can collaborate and answer their questions as a self-serve case. So when thinking about operationalizing self-service, that we thought that's very, very important, there's a reason that it's been challenging to meet the needs of these teams. It's actually a spectrum. And that has come up in a number of talks that I've had with leaders. On the left, you'll see the low setup tools. These are built for non-technical users. They're inflexible. You basically can answer question that it knows ahead of time because it's pre-computed. In this model, usually you have auto tracking. So it's quick to set up, you auto track something and answer some basic question. However, the challenge is that soon the team hit the ceiling. They answer those questions, but if they want to ask a little bit more sophisticated, unknown question, they cannot get their answer with these tools. On the right, we have the tools that are built on top of data warehouse. These are flexible tools. These are mainly SQL based. It's mainly used by technical people. However, because it's needs to it requires a lot of joint between different tables and so on to answer this question about user behavior, and it's basically using flexible SQL, it is pretty slow. And it's mainly designed for technical users. If you're following that model, you basically need the data science or the technical person to be answering the question. Spencer, our CEO, is actually talking about terminology called a data bread line. People, the non-technical people, are waiting in a data bread line to get their questions answered. So if they're in the front of the line, they ask their question, they get a serving, their question gets answered. And if they have a follow-up question, they need to go back at the end of the line and wait for their turn to get the second serving. And that's basically the problem, because if you ask one question, don't get your answer quickly enough, you're going to basically forget about it and it stops the process of exploration. The solution that is required to basically enable self-serve analytics is to have a solution in the middle. You need something that can be exploratory, So and it's out of the box in a way so that it allows people to get basically started quickly. They should be able to ask a question, get their answer right away, and go to this exploratory phases, go ask one question, then the next one, and then the next one, and basically build that knowledge and become more data literate and create hypotheses, validate them, and they can get that answer in real time, because if the answer is not real time, again they context switch and they forget about it. And you need to have an iterative governance. They need to make sure that the quality of the data can remain high as people are exploring and getting their answers. That's where we see the break with the modern BI and modeling and monitoring things, as they're sitting on top of a data warehouse, mainly because they're built for technical team. Yes, they allow some non-technical use cases, but they're still built for technical teams and requires SQL knowledge. And one other important thing is that they're too flexible. They're not built to understand customer data. They're not designed for that. And that's why we need a solution, a different solution. And that's where digital analytics come. We see top organizations are adopting digital analytics tools. In digital analytics, it doesn't start with a blank canvas. It starts with some opinionated insight that you might want to derive from your data, whether you want to understand, segment your user, you want to analyze retention, understand how users go through funnels, understand different persona of users. So basically, it starts with some opinionated insight that you might want to derive from your data. And I think the most important thing is that it has an innate understanding of users. It actually have a big user identity part to make sure that it stitch the entire user journey, whether they're joining from one device or multiple devices. It allows for exploration. So that's important that it has instance query speeds. And it allows to answer not just a known question, but also the unknown, so that users can become more sophisticated, ask harder questions, and go on their basically journey of becoming data literate. It's event-based and it is integrated with many different tools and sources. It's collaborative and allows storytelling. Why? Because understanding user journey is a team sport. You want to make sure when one team member understands an insight, it can share it with the other parts of the organization, and then they can build upon that. So that's why the knowledge of the org and knowledge of the team becomes bigger and more than the sum of the knowledge of individual. It allows for mixed data literacy, so that you can have people who are non-technical, collaborate on the same tool with technical team like the data scientists, and then they can exchange idea, question, and ask, and basically allow for that collaboration between different people who have different data literacy understanding. And it allows for exploratory analysis, and that becomes an important part of your stack to allow self-analytics. So you can have all of these users coming and exploring together and answering questions and collaborating. So now that your team have successfully adopted digital analytics, everybody's using it, it's growing viral in your organization, it's important to note that there's another challenge to solve. And it's important to realize that democratization is a balancing act between chaos and control. Sometimes everybody with data in their hand is not necessarily a great thing. This is a quote from one of our customers. It takes too long, too many people, and too much confusion to measure and understand performance. When you have too many people with tools, it's important that we take control and make sure that we create guardrails. So here are some tips that leaders have shared with me that has helped them manage chaos that might be useful in your environment too. First, before doing anything, before thinking about what data I need to collect, how do I instrument, before doing any of that, it's important to understand what is the top down goal of the business. What is it that we are trying to optimize? What is it that is important? What is our objective? And then understand how does this analytic solution that we are building, that we are providing to the organization, is going to address and help that. Second, it's important to not try to track too much data and create chaos. Start small, track some data, understand some behavior, and then go and track more. So start small and be iterative. That's very valuable to make sure that you're not creating too much chaos and too much mess. You're basically constantly improving, but you're basically measuring and tracking what is valuable and then creating insights from that. It's also important to have proactive and continuous governance. You want to make sure your quality of data remains high at all times. It's not that we need to just go once a quarter and clean our data. No, it's very, very valuable to keep the data clean and make sure that the data quality does not degrade over time so that you can always gain valuable insight. I joke with my friends and say companies or teams that they say, okay, we do once a month and we do data cleanup. It's like my house. We make a mess. My kids and I myself, we make a mess in our house. And once every 2 weeks, my cleaning lady comes and cleans the house. It's clean for another day and becomes messy again. It would be a lot better if we could just maintain and continuously clean the house to make sure that we're always enjoying our surroundings. So that's just the same. If you constantly maintain and govern your data and have proactive and continuous governance, it can help you to keep the data clean and gain valuable insight all the time. And the last one, which is very, very important, is that enable exploration with guardrails versus just saying to the team, here is a dashboard of some analysis and opening up queue for people to come and ask questions. Because if you do that, people are going to get excited and come up with so many questions that, again, you're going to create chaos because there's so many people who are asking questions and your team is basically overwhelmed and cannot answer all of that. So what happens when you manage that chaos? That's actually from two of our customers. That's from two of our customers. In one of them, which is a large decentralized fintech, they implemented and enabled self-serve analytics to our organization, and they saw in a little bit over a year that they went from 200 users who were using Amplitude. This is Amplitude and Amplitude. This shows the number of users who are using Amplitude to drive insights from their data and make data-driven decisions. So they went from 200, a little under 200 users, to 927 monthly active users. Such an amazing growth and such an amazing culture of now lots of people collaborating and making decisions together in this company. And that is not only true for the frontiers or the fintechs or the top tech company. Actually, we saw in a more centralized traditional enterprise that when enabled and basically went through the process and did that investment and enabled the team to understand and analyze data and gain insight from that. They went in less than a year to 566 users who are coming to Amplitude constantly and gaining insight and making better decision with data. It's pretty incredible to see how these teams have adopted quickly with analytics. Lesson number 4. So we saw about how important it is, what are the challenges, but I think it's very important to call out that the data teams are the change agents. We talk to a lot of organizations and we explain about this and they say, yeah, that makes sense. It's an important thing to do. Self-analytic is very important for us to be able to scale. But some of them are telling us, yes, that's great, but I can build it myself. I can build that tool. I have a technical team and they're capable. The reality is that, yes, of course, you can do it. It's not a question of can you do it. The question is, should you be doing that? Or should you just enable the team and learn them to fish on their own and enable them to self-serve the question? So you can put your focus of your data team in more strategic area and solving more challenging and exciting problem. That's the important thing that we need to be thinking about. Again, looking at amplitude and amplitude, this is the insight that we have seen. We have seen that the 73% of economic buyer or power users of amplitude are engineers or they have data background. These are the people that they get it. They think of themselves as facilitator, enablers within the organization to facilitate the organization to become data-driven and make decisions based on data. And you can see it in the list. These are the most advanced organization in the world, and they are, as you can see, we have head of automation and growth at Square, director of data science at PayPal, chief data officer at Warner Music Groups, VP of Data Science at Atlassian. These are the organizations that are always frontiers, and they're always trying to push the boundary and enable their team. And these are the ones that basically decided they want to be the facilitator and they want to use Amplitude to help their team make decisions based on data and become self-serve and understand analytics. So why are the data teams should be doing that and are doing that? First of all, they are the one that they have powers and skill to execute. These are the team that are very technical. They know what needs to be done, and at the same time, they have access to the budget. These are the team that have the money and they can do that, and they know that they can invest in basically change agents and changing the process, not just tools. It's very important. Making a company data driven is a transformational change. You cannot just change the culture of a company by just buying a tool. You have to basically invest in tool, peoples, and processes. So it's a change. And actually, it's been interesting that we have seen in companies who have been very successful in that transformation is that they have an executive who knows it, who gets it, that this transformation needs to be happening. Either that exec come from a tech company that has been doing that, organically from the beginning, and that exec has learned and know what needs to be happening and how to manage the change in a more traditional company. That's or it's a basically technology first company that they have basically doing that, and technology native company that have been doing that from the beginning. But it's very important that people, data leaders who are doing that, they realize that they need to be change agent and they're not just buying a tool. Also, data leaders are responsible for cross-functional data-driven decisions. So that's part of their charter of the work, and they can make that happen and enable that. And if they do that, if they enable that and solve a lot of important problems and let people make decisions and scale decision-making with self-serve analytics, they can work on some of more strategic and challenging problem. And they can work more efficiently. They can provide a lot of access, they can reduce costs and do a lot more innovation because they can work on, their team can work on harder problems. Lesson number 5. Hesitating creates mounting pressure. So I'm sure still there's a lot of people who might not be convinced that getting self-serve analytics across the organization can be that impactful. That's possible. However, what's happening and what we've seen happening in the industry is that if you don't intentionally do that, basically there are a number of teams that they're frustrated by waiting in the data breadline. So maybe a product team or marketing team, they realize, no, they need better tooling. They actually go and acquire and get a self-serve analytics tool. And they start using that, and because they're not able to scale with the model of waiting for a data science to answer their questions. So they start using that, and then they get bigger, they come to you, and you haven't been part from early on. Now you have to adopt and figure out how to do that. Or actually it can happen that one team uses it and then another team uses it and it comes to you again. That becomes a very sticky situation. So how do we handle this sticky situation? Let's just talk a little bit about that, and let's look at again redefining the value of self-serve. So to explain that, I'm creating this simple graph that on the y-axis you have the insight quality, the quality of the insight that people gain from data. And on the x-axis, you have the insight complexity. What kind of, how complicated insight can you get from the data? Let's say that you don't have a self-serve analytics, so you don't have Amplitude or any other self-serve analytics solution. So your data team is going to create a dashboard and give it to product team. So immediately, as soon as they get the dashboard, they're seeing some data, some insight from that data. So immediately their insight quality gets higher. Before they were running completely blind. Now they get some insight, which is good, and they can get those answers. That's a good step in the right direction. However, anything that is more complicated than the question that you have thought about and put it in dashboard, they hit a wall, and they need to come back to the analyst to ask the question. So they come back, and they have one thing that they ask the question and so on. And actually, what is happening is that they're gonna weighing down your team, because they'll be coming and asking you questions. So your team is actually, your analyst basically has to spend a lot of their time answering the questions that are not answered in those dashboards. So they're just spending all of that. In that model, they cannot get to more advanced questions and higher quality insights. So what would happen if you increase the ability of the team to answer more questions self-serve using a tool like Amplitude or another self-serve analytics tool? The whole thing, in that model, the whole thing shifts to the right. So, and actually to the top and right. So you can have, because you're enabling self-analytics, the quality of the insight can increase, go to the top, as well as cross to the right. The complexity of the insight can be a lot higher. So people can ask questions, get an insight, ask the next question. They can do that self-serve, and they can ask more and more complex questions. And when you do that, now this product manager can do that self-serve. So they're not coming down to your team for every questions. They're answering a lot of their questions on their own. And as a result of that, their data literacy in their organization goes higher. People have better understanding of data. They know what does data mean. They know how to validate insight and so on. And at the same time, because your analysts are not bogged down with answering those simple questions, they can spend their time working on more strategic work. And the team can be more efficient. The PMs get their answer much faster. Analysts can work on more harder, more strategic, insightful work. And the other exciting thing is that now the team, the PM and analysts, can actually collaborate on their data, because the product people have become more data leaders, so they have a wider area of collaboration. And when you do that, it becomes really valuable. So let's take an example of a customer of us that actually implemented that. When they removed that pressure, they actually did a POC for just 2 months. It's a very short period of time. Within that 2 months, they were able to get to 450 users who were using Amplitude to gain insight from their data. And that enabled them to reduce down the analytics request by 20%. So now the data scientists have 20% more time to be working on more strategic work, because they don't need to spend that time answering questions. Teams are getting their own answers self-serve. And that's only happens after 2 months. I'm sure as time goes, teams are become more literate, and they can answer a lot of more of their questions. So we have, it can actually, it can move from 20% to 50% more efficient. So imagine what happens if your analysts and data scientists have 20% to 50% more efficiency in their work. What other exciting projects they can work on, and what more strategic initiatives they can take on, instead of just answering questions for the non-technical people. So final thought. It's very important. This is one of the things that was shared with me with from a lot of leaders, that Before doing anything, first understand the critical workflow of your internal stakeholder and business objectives. Understand what is it that your product managers want to do. What are the business objectives? What is it that your marketing people want to do? And start from that. Understand the team, how the team works, and how you can help them basically become more efficient and more self-serve. Then, when you understand the teams and their workflows and their questions, you can focus on designing solutions optimized for those workflows. And the solution might be amplitude or might be something else. But when you do that, then you can quantify the value and see if it's worth time, effort to invest in self-serve analytics. And a lot of people have told us that it was definitely worth it, and it opened up so many opportunities. So again, I urge you to try it yourself and see whether that's going to be useful for your organization. One last thing before we go. As I mentioned, we have learned integration between the modern data stack and the growth stack has been top of mind for lots of data leaders like you. And as some of you know, we have built great data connection and sharing between Snowflake and Amplitude to bridge that gap and make Amplitude work off the same exact data that you have in Snowflake. So you can enable service analytics on top of the data that you already have in Snowflake. So today, I am very excited to announce a new product launch that we are doing. It's called Profile Connect. It's a new product launch with Snowflake. Profile Connect is the first time Amplitude user can directly query their Snowflake customer data with Amplitude and then combine it with the data they already have in Amplitude. This means Amplitude is the only platform when you can build customer profiles and segment audiences based on customer data in Snowflake. Profile Connect will ensure that customer analysis will always be based on what is directly in Snowflake. So you have all of your analytics data, you have all the user behavioral data, you have the profile information, and you can integrate them and really gain a lot of insight. Your team can access your Snowflake data in Amplitude and make product changes that will drive business growth. If you want to learn more about Profile Connect, scan this QR code on the screen and join a webinar with Amplitude product team. I think that's going to be on December 13th. And you will learn how we are supercharging your ability to make your customer profiles portable with a full view of your data access. Data across Snowflake and Amplitude. I'm very, very excited because I really feel like that this initiative, some of these were initiated based on the conversation and the insight and the question that I've been asked by data lead, that I'm very excited for this launch. Anyways, that's it for today. It's been great sharing some of this, and thank you so much for taking the time and being part of the journey. I would love to chat with you and actually hear your insights. So I would love to connect and get to know what are your challenges and how are you thinking about solving this problem in your organization. Thanks a lot.